In this podcast episode, Robert Salas, a former missile launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base during the 1960s, shares his extraordinary experiences and insights related to nuclear missile control, UFO encounters, and the broader implications of extraterrestrial interference in nuclear weapons readiness. The discussion covers the specifics of his role, the nature of nuclear operations during the Cold War, multiple UFO incidents involving nuclear missile shutdowns, government responses, and contemporary considerations about nuclear threats and secrecy. Robert Salas describes his role as a missile launch officer, trained to monitor and, if ordered, launch Minuteman nuclear missiles at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana during the mid-1960s. He was part of a two-person crew stationed 60 feet underground in a hardened concrete and steel capsule, tasked with 24-hour readiness to respond to launch orders. Their responsibilities were to ensure missiles were operational and properly targeted, with no direct decision-making power regarding actual launches. Launches only occurred following coded commands from higher authority. The base housed approximately 150 Minuteman ICBMs, arranged in launch control facilities, each managing 10 missiles. When asked about psychological evaluations required for personnel controlling nuclear weapons, Salas notes regular assessments to confirm mental fitness and training aptitude, but no detailed recollection of specific drug screening or psychological profiles. The clearance level at Malmstrom was above top secret, underscoring the extreme confidentiality surrounding their work. Though the military had an Office of Special Investigations, AFOC, monitoring personnel, Salas emphasizes that most major strategic decisions were made well above their level, with their role limited to execution upon receipt of orders. Salas explains the nuclear launch procedures, emphasizing the importance of training and frequent drills to maintain readiness. The missiles were solid-fueled, stored ready to launch instantly without fueling requirements. If a nuclear exchange was initiated, whether preemptively or in retaliation, the launch control crew's job was to execute swiftly upon receiving authenticated launch codes. While other nuclear forces, such as bombers and submarines, exist with differing vulnerabilities, ground-based ICBMs, like those at Malmstrom, were considered more susceptible due to their fixed locations, but remained critical to the U.S. nuclear triad. The conversation expands to current global nuclear threats, noting that more countries now possess nuclear arsenals than in Salas's time. He highlights the dangers posed by nations such as China, India, Pakistan, and potential proliferation in the Middle East, especially regarding Iran's ambitions and alliances. Salas also addresses the increased risks of nuclear accidents, rogue militias, or non-state actors acquiring nuclear devices, and the threat of tactical nuclear weapons, which, despite their tactical label, hold destructive power similar to Hiroshima-level bombs. The broader concern is that nuclear weapons, regardless of scale, present existential threats not only to humanity, but also to the planet's ecological balance. The episode delves into the precarious nature of nuclear deterrence in regional conflicts, especially between India and Pakistan, and tensions around Iran and Israel. Salas points out that even limited use of nuclear weapons in a local conflict could precipitate wider crises. He expresses skepticism about whether military strikes, such as bombing Iran's nuclear facilities, can effectively impede nuclear development, warning that such actions may instead motivate more countries to pursue their own arsenals. Salas recounts documented historical instances where U.S. military leaders during Korea and Vietnam requested permission to use nuclear weapons, underscoring the ever-present temptation and serious contemplation of nuclear warfare in conflicts. He references President Kennedy's era, notably during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the U.S. military was placed at DEFCON 2, indicating imminent nuclear war readiness, highlighting how close the world had come to catastrophic conflict. One of the most remarkable highlights is Salas's detailed account of two separate UFO-related incidents at Malmstrom in March 1967, just 8 days apart, during which multiple nuclear missiles inexplicably became non-operational simultaneously. On March 24, 1967, while stationed in the Underground Launch Control Center at Oscar Flight, Salas received reports from guards of strange, silent lights performing maneuvers impossible for conventional aircraft, including hovering and abrupt course changes. Shortly thereafter, all 10 missiles at the launch facility lost launch capability, as indicated by red no-go lights. Guards who were dispatched to inspect the missile silos encountered hovering red glowing lights and were too frightened to approach further. Radio contact with the guards was intermittently lost, and one guard was injured under unclear circumstances, possibly related to the encounter or to mishandling weapons or fencing. Following the event, Salas and his commanding officer were ordered to sign strict non-disclosure agreements under penalty of severe prison sentences. Salas connects his incident to others, including a similar one at Echo Flight earlier in March 1967, and additional reports from Malmstrom and other U.S. bases such as Malmstrom Air Force Base in North Dakota. Across these incidents, multiple missiles were simultaneously disabled amid UFO sightings. Witnesses consistently reported inexplicable lights hovering over nuclear sites, interference including lost radio contact, and exceptional technical anomalies affecting missile control systems. Maintenance crews attempting to restore launch capability found missiles repeatedly shutting down near the presence of these unidentified objects, suggesting precise knowledge or control by the UFOs over missile systems. Following the missile shutdowns, Boeing, as the contractor responsible for the Minuteman missile system, conducted investigations including bench tests on guidance systems. They identified a particular electronic signal capable of temporarily disabling the missile's logic coupler, an integral part of the guidance system. However, they had no feasible explanation for how such a signal could be simultaneously applied to all missiles, especially since missile cabling was shielded against electromagnetic interference. This raised suspicions that the shutdowns were caused by external, unknown sources, a conclusion that remains unexplained. Salas discusses the University of Colorado's Codan investigation commissioned by the U.S. Air Force between 1966 and 1968 to study UFO phenomena. The report concluded without acknowledging the missile shutdown incidents or related UFO activity, despite multiple eyewitness reports and whistleblower testimonies documented by contractors such as Ray Fowler from Sylvania Corporation. Fowler attempted to bring these findings to light, but was ignored. The official silence and dismissal contributed to public distrust and suspicions of cover-ups regarding UFOs and their interference with nuclear assets. After resigning from the Air Force in 1971, and years later discovering public references to similar missile shutdown incidents, Salas began going public with his story. He connected with researchers like Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes, and other former military personnel with corroborating experiences. Although some government bodies and officials have received testimonies and evidence, there have been no formal congressional hearings inviting Salas or similar witnesses to testify about UFOs interacting with nuclear systems. Efforts to engage with official channels remain largely unacknowledged or suppressed. Salas addresses recent attempts, including a Wall Street Journal article, to explain away the missile shutdowns as results of electromagnetic pulse, EMP, testing or hazing rituals, descriptions he and others find implausible given the complexity and secrecy of nuclear operations. Independent research affirms that non-nuclear EMP weapons capable of such effects did not exist in 1967, and the presence of such devices on operational missile sites without detection by security personnel is highly unlikely. Salas suspects these narratives may be part of misinformation campaigns to discredit witnesses and obscure the true nature of the events. The episode extends the conversation to similar incidents worldwide, including documented cases at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California and Schusterberg in the Netherlands, among others. Visual evidence, witness testimonies, and video footage suggest consistent patterns where UFOs have demonstrated anomalous behavior around nuclear weapons and facilities, including disabling systems or conducting surveillance. Salas considers these repeated encounters evidence that an intelligence beyond earthly origin has a vested interest in humanity's nuclear capabilities and possibly acts to prevent nuclear war. Throughout the discussion, Salas expresses reflections on the implications of nuclear weapons for humanity and the planet, noting the delicate interdependence of life and the catastrophic consequences of nuclear conflict. He speculates that the UFO presence may be driven by concern for Earth's preservation rather than human politics. Salas discusses the secrecy and control of advanced technological knowledge by national governments and private aerospace contractors, creating a shadow hierarchy that prevents transparency and impairs democratic oversight. Salas reveals that despite Cold War de-escalation, the global nuclear threat remains, with more countries gaining nuclear capability. He points out that advanced tactical nuclear weapons are being developed even today by major nuclear powers, maintaining the potential for devastating conflicts. He also shares insider anecdotes about the existence of back-engineered UFO technology controlled by private aerospace firms, often shielded from public knowledge through complex government and corporate secrecy. Though skeptical of governmental transparency, Salas remains hopeful that growing numbers of witnesses and advocates will drive more comprehensive disclosure of UFO-related information. He has made his testimony and documentation available through interviews, podcasts, and a YouTube channel, striving to bring public attention to these critical issues. Salas expresses a willingness to testify before Congress under oath and encourages others with knowledge to come forward despite risks, anticipating that broader public awareness is the key to understanding and addressing the delicate intersection of extraterrestrial phenomena and nuclear security.